Hey, this is Coach Deanna with another episode of the Winning Element podcast. I'm super excited to give you this extra bonus part 2 version of my interview with Danielle McGinnis. You know, we did our first podcast and everything went great. And then, about a week later, she hit me up and said, hey, some stuff has changed for me. Can we do another podcast? And I said, you know what? Let's just do a part 2. So we actually got on the podcast and had a completely impromptu, vulnerable, super connected conversation. So this is the part 2 for the first episode with Danielle McGinnis. If you're just clicking on this episode now, make sure that you go back and listen to the first episode with Danielle McGinnis. It's going to give a lot more background to her journey, and it's going to really give more power to what she's going to share in this episode. I hope you enjoy this episode with Danielle McGinnis. Let's go. Please welcome to the Winning Element for the second time and the Winning Element's only second time guest, Danielle McGinnis. Danielle, good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a week since we did our last episode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these episodes right behind each other because, the text that I got from you this morning, and we're doing this podcast on the fly, the text that I got from you this morning, I knew that I had to call you, and I knew that that we needed to talk. And then the podcast kind of is flowing from the conversation and the piece of information that you shared with me. So I'm excited to get into it. We talked about how, man, this is really an important message, and to kind of piggyback on our last episode, which if you're listening to this episode now, go back and listen to the first episode, or the one that's right behind or before this with Danielle, and then listen to this one, because it's all going to flow together. It's all going to make more sense if you do that. And it's just going to compound the power and the message that we're really driving home in these podcasts. So good morning. I'm happy to see you. So what's going on in your life?
Thank you for having me back on the podcast. Very new in my life. As I talked about in the last podcast we did together, I was serving as the operations manager at Brick-Built Strength. And this morning I decided to step out of my role in Brick-Built Strength. And after doing so, and reflecting on it, I was like, well, we just did a whole podcast on strength, so I feel like I should text Deanna and just let her know, kind of what the details are. So I guess this is my public declaration of me resigning out of the company, but I just want to, just have a conversation and chat about why and what it's taken me to get to this point, and where I'm going. So
I'm so excited. And when I got the message from you, so I got this text message, and the message was like, hey, I needed to give you a heads up. I'm no longer with Brick Built. Can we, do you want to do another podcast? And I immediately knew that I needed to call you and talk to you about it. And to, number one, tell you that I am so proud of you for making a really big decision, and a really courageous decision, because as people will find out in the last podcast, this is something that you have sacrificed for. This is something that you have built. This is something that you have been instrumental in pouring your heart, soul, and your body into. This is something that you've really spent a lot of time cultivating, and also a community that you have been leading, a community that you have been giving yourself to, and something that your identity has been a part of. And that there's something so scary about making these big decisions. So number one, I want to honor you for your bravery and courageousness. Number two, I want to take a second and also honor you for listening to the inner voice, to recognizing when something is no longer serving you, and for acting on that. You know, sometimes it's so easy for us to stay where we are, for us to continue to make sacrifices, for us to continue to not necessarily be in alignment. So I think that one of the big pieces of this podcast, and why I wanted to get on and talk about this, to share with people, is that there's a lot of power in creating space and being able to say goodbye to something or say hello to something new. So I am so proud of you, and I am so excited for you, and I'm really, really stoked about being able to share with the audience kind of what led to this. You know, in our last interview, we talked about making sacrifices, we talked about serving others, and we talked about investing in yourself. And I think that this podcast is going to be a good part two, because it hits on a lot of the things that we talked about. So let's get into it. What was the biggest factor in your decision to make the pivot?
So I think the biggest thing that I was starting to realize, as we talked about in the last podcast, I spent a large majority of the first part of this year sitting in struggle. Not really. I transitioned from a place that was super comfortable, a location that was super comfortable, surrounded by family and friends, to a city where I didn't know a single soul. And that transition in itself gave me some power as I started to kind of develop my sense of Danielle for myself. And stepping out of your comfort zone does something to your soul that you really can't put words behind. So just that kind of gave me some power to understand, like, you're okay, you know? So I think the biggest thing for me is, like, I've always kind of relied on the validation of others to say that, like, you're going to be okay in this world. And move on top of all the courses I invested in, all that put together, I was feeling like I was doing good, because getting some momentum, and like I was getting this thing called life figured out. Well, you know, that's not the case. No one has it figured out. So just recently I graduated from physical therapy school, and that was also another huge transition, because now it's like, okay, this is what you have on the table. What do you want to do with your life? And having all these things presented in front of me, I really had to sit down and sit with myself and be like, what do you want out of this life? And what is going to, I guess, make the inner Danielle shine so bright? And Brick Built, for the longest time, gave me the strength to move forward and get some confidence in myself. But I was always feeling like when I would grow, it would only be to a certain level. And I got to this point where I just felt this deep inner sense of that there's more out there in this world. And I'm getting in alignment with all these different buckets in my life. But the one thing that I felt kind of out of alignment was my potential career path. And what was holding me back was a fear. And it was a fear that was very, very deep within myself. And it was something that I had to sit by myself a lot and think about. And I realized that within the Brick Built structure, I absolutely love what we do. But I noticed that um, I couldn't bring 100% of Danielle to the business. And if I can't bring 100% of myself to the business, I'm leaving all of that out for someone else. It's almost like a selfish, like, why are you holding this part of you back? Because there's so many people that you could serve and so many people that could benefit from like having the 100% of you out in this world. And when you have to sit down with yourself and make that decision, literally the hardest decision of your life, because it's like, do you want to sit in safety? Do you want to sit in comfortable? Or do you want to actually believe in yourself? And that's a really hard decision. And the biggest question I asked myself when I made this decision was, if you loved yourself, what would you do? And the answer to that is, if I loved myself, I would resign from Brick Built and pursue my dreams. And that's super hard. Like it brings tears to my eyes.
It
But
should. It should. That
like,
should, because that touches such a deep part of yourself. Like, being able to show up for yourself is a big thing, and I'm sure there's been times in your life where you haven't. We all have those. Everybody, and and more frequently than we like to admit. We stay in relationships for too long, whether that's with partners. We stay in on teams or with sports for too long because we feel that we have to, or because we owe it to somebody, or we owe it to an organization, or we owe it to our parents, or there's always serving others, right? And to a certain degree, that's beneficial, right? Like, we can, that has its place. But when it gets down to the soul level of, it's the thing that's keeping you small. It's keeping you
yeah,
from
yeah,
expressing, or from serving, or from being in a place that's more aligned with who you are and what you want and how you want to serve. It's hard. It's hard to do that, but it's so necessary, and it's easy. It's easy to sit in safety. It's easy, but it's only easy for a certain amount of time, because that safety gets really uncomfortable. It creates friction, and until life freaking moves you, right? Until something happens where you're like, I can't do it anymore, and then you have to, and then that's when you have the influx of personal power, and then you're able to go do that. But so often it takes the immense amount of friction from being safe before we venture outside of that. So when we really listen to our inner self, when we really when we love ourselves, when we have a deep connection with ourselves and with what we want to do, how we want to serve, and how we just want to grow, right? When we have that, it might be scary. It is scary. It's scary and it's uncomfortable, but it's more comfortable than sitting in what you're in now.
yeah. I think that um, for the longest time, I had a lot of people telling me um, my potential in this world. And there was something inside of me that didn't believe that.
Mm.
And it's only taken me, breaking to pieces and hitting rock bottom and trying to rebuild myself back up to realize that, like, I got me. You know what I mean? Like, I've always had me. And I just think that if someone out there is like struggling with an indecision, or they're struggling with, something that doesn't feel completely aligned with them, do the hard thing, because the hard things, I find, turn out to be the most beautiful things, because sometimes you need that, like, that little push from other people, and like My mom is just like, I can't even say like what an incredible person she is, because she's just like objectively stepped back and just like kind of like let me see my options. And all my mentors have just been like insanely supportive of this whole process. And I feel like they've kind of, I mean, we kind of talked about this on the last podcast, but they held up mirrors for me, and they're like, if you could only see what I see in you. And it wasn't until, I don't know, I just had like an aha moment, and I'm like, I see it. I
Yes.
finally
Yes.
see it. And like, I feel like it's not until you get to that point where it's like you said, like the friction and like it's like this low level suffering that
Yeah.
is just like eating at you, where it's like, like everything's great, like I am happy, like, but there's just something that doesn't feel fully connected and fully in alignment with me. And I'm never going to know what that thing is until I jump. And for me, I've always been somebody that like if I set a goal for myself, like you best believe I'm gonna do it. Like, and like growth has always been a very, very high value on my list. And I was feeling like I wasn't getting the growth that I wanted out of the business.
Hmm.
And I felt like to move forward and to feel fulfilled and to feel that sense of inner peace, that I had to step away. And um, I just think that gut instincts, oh my God. I put a post about this before, but like gut instincts are guardian angels. Like they're there for a reason. Like your intuition is there because it's like your deep knowing of
Hmm.
what your truth is. And I've said in the past that like every single time that I don't listen to my intuition, I end up regretting something. I end up in a situation where I was like, dang it, I wish I would have listened to myself. And now when I'm in this position of transition in my life and I have the opportunity to choose, I'm finally choosing myself. Finally. I'm finally listening to that voice that says, Danielle, you're worth it. Come on. Like, I got you. I've always had you. Like, let's go. And that's, I mean, it's so scary, but oh my God, the power in that. Power in that. It's insane.
And I'm sure it's a relief, right, for you to be able to just
It
okay,
is. I mean, it was
okay.
the best conversation I've ever had in my life, because not only, you know, are Dom and I in a business relationship, but he's my best friend. And I want to make sure that he always knows that, like, whatever I choose in this life, I have him, man. Like, I have him forever. And um, I think that the main thing that I said when I left the business was coming from the complete, most deepest, truest, most genuine part of my soul. And it's not, I didn't blame anybody for anything. Like, it was literally like, this is a calling. I can't explain it. I can't give you instances. I can't give you reasons except for I need to do this for myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
I love it. I want to go back to this like gut instinct or intuition as guardian angels. Sometimes like the human body is very interesting, right? So we have like this a lot, like this amygdala that's like in our brain that's like like there's fear, unsafe, freak out now, right? And that like sometimes that fear that fear response guides us to we react to fear, right? And then there's that other like gut intuition instinct that's deep within us, that's like this, it's almost like your head, and I don't want to say head versus heart because that, you know, they're interconnected, but there's a piece of your animal instinct that is like, we need to survive. We, you know, and based on everything that historically has happened to you, and based on everything that you're inundated with within media and all that stuff, like that plays a part in how you see, like the lens that you see the world, right? So it's like, you know, you'll like things go off and then you're just like, oh my God, gut instincts, don't do this, go here, you know, and you know, that's like the fear response. So, you know, there's a difference between the fear response, and then there's the difference between the deep knowing and the intuition. And as we start to develop, as we spend more time with ourselves, as we invest in our growth, as we start to get clear on who we are, how we're going to serve, and just who we're showing up as, the more we can distinguish from the fear response versus the gut intuition guardian angel. So like, as people are like, oh, I get the gut instinct all the time and it's to get the fuck out of here, or you know.
I think the biggest thing is, especially in today's society, that, you know, we live in a society of patterns.
Oh yeah.
Everybody works on these patterns that they've developed from when they were just tiny humans. And it's not our fault, really. It's based on how we were raised and what we see the world as in our eyes. And so for me, growing up, it's not a thing for women, especially, to like go out of the norm and not be married by 25, not have kids at 25, you know, like these are things that, like, for where I grew up and like my whole family and people around my area, like that's what everybody's doing. So I think breaking those patterns is gonna be extremely uncomfortable, and your physiology is gonna be like, no, 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 no. Like 27 years of nah, like we've always done it this way. Like, why are you doing it that way? And to like actually put your foot down and being like, you know, I'm breaking these patterns. I know these no longer serve me. And truly, like, thoughts are just information. And if you think about your thoughts that way, you can use them to propel you through those times that are fearful, those times that pull you down, those times that, you know, your heart feels like it's ripping out of your chest. But it's like, what are these thoughts telling me? It's just information. And with that information, you can step forward into following that gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was on the phone with my mom the other day, and she was like, Danielle, she was like, you know, I just don't like to see you like this, because she's like, you're so torn right now. She's like, but you've put in so much work over the past year. And she's like, I find myself even like growing through you, because how much you've grown, and it makes me take a step back and look at my life and see how I'm showing up. And I'm like, if that's not motivation for me to step up for myself, I don't know what it is.
Oh
you
my
know?
God.
Because it's like, dang, like someone that raised me as a human is like inspired by me, you know, like I'm breaking that pattern. Like I'm no longer saying like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I have to settle, you know? Yeah. And I think that every woman out there, or man, I don't care. I think every person out there has the right to do exactly what they're called to do. That's your birthright as a human. Like that's what you should do. And you should unapologetically do that if you're working from your heart. You don't owe anybody an explanation for following your heart into something. So that's why moving forward in this transition of my life, I don't know what's to come. I don't know if this was a bad decision. I don't know if it was a good decision, but I know that my heart has led me here, and I know that every time that I've listened to that deep inner feeling, it's always been, it's not right or wrong. It's just information, and it's either going to be lead me down to this path of extreme opportunity and extreme success, whatever you deem that as, or it's going to be a learning lesson.
Yeah.
And I can step back and be like, okay, how do I show up now? Because if you didn't have the times in your life that were so great, and then and then you wouldn't have times to compare it to that were not so great, your life would be really boring.
Well, it's a 6, right? Like nobody. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, depending on people's preferences, but living life at an even 6 all the time, that sucks. Like just being at a 6 all the time. I had a friend that she didn't want to be, she didn't like the lows, and she didn't like highs. So she would always be at a 6. So like I'd be like, oh my God, we're gonna go do this thing together, and she'd be like, yeah, that's cool, and I'm like, you're not fun to be around because you don't want to like come up with like, and like I live my life at a 15. All right. Like I get it. I understand it's hard to be on my level. And I've known this since I was a little girl, that when I get excited about things, like I can't expect people to be anywhere near me, because I used to, right? So I used to be like a 15, and then somebody would be at a, they'd be even at a 10, right? And I'd be like, they're not at a 15, like they wouldn't be at a 15 with me. And that was always like, it'd like pull me down to a 10. But I learned when I was growing up that like how I feel and like the energy and like whatever mood I'm in is going to be what it's going to be. And it doesn't need to be influenced or to be, I don't want to say be careful of, but be aware when, or give myself permission too. Give myself permission to be at a 15 when somebody's at a 6, because I don't care. Like I'm going to be at a 15. Like I don't need to bring myself down, and I don't need to be responsible for bringing you up. But like going back to like life is a 6, right? Like life is a 6? No, thank you. Then you don't feel the 2, right? Then you don't feel the 2.
Yeah.
But you also don't feel the 10. but you don't feel the 10. And life is so interesting, right? Like our body's always giving us signals. There's always incoming information. Our body's like doot, doot, or it's like, oh yeah, we're good, whatever. But that's moment to moment. Like life, our body, our cells, everything is in dynamic flow. So whether you're at a 2, like you're at a 2 right now, not you, just, maybe you're probably at a 10 right now because this is powerful. But, at some point in this decision, like you're probably sitting at a 2 or a 3, and you're just like, oh man, I don't know what to do with this, right? So you're sitting at the 2, and then, like an hour later, or maybe even 5 minutes later, just by having a conversation with somebody, or just by just realizing, oh my gosh, I've always had my back. I'm always taken care of. I have everything I need to succeed. Like, you go from a 2 to a 10 in a matter of 30 seconds, or you go from a 2 to a 5 to a 10 within the matter of an hour. And everything is in this dynamic flow. And, the 2s make the 10s a 12 because you can see the contrast in between them. And we can learn that these are temporary states, that this is like part, and this is the magic of human experience. This is the magic of having a body. This is the magic of like living in a modern world where we have hashtag first world problems, and we like hashtag first world problems. I have a degree and I don't, or like, I can give so many different examples in my own life too, right? Where it's like when I finished like writing the book, and it's like, I went through this, I like launched the book, and I went through this like, oh my God, like I just went, like I tanked. And it was like, I'd given every energy I had. And then it was also, now I have to go run another marathon in promoting and like getting it out into the world. And it was just like, oh, poor you. Like you wrote a book. Oh, poor you. You get to go promote a book. Oh, poor you. You have to do more work. And, and it's like you get to that point and you're like, oh, wait, I have everything I need to succeed. So like there isn't any excuse for, and it's okay to be in the lull. It's okay to be a 2, but guess what? It's going to be a 10 in a half an hour, or it's going to be in a 10 in 3 days, or it's going to be at whatever. But that's the magic. It's magic.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just realizing, okay, like what are my values in this life? And it always seems to come back to like the times that I'm at a 2 or the times that I'm lower, I'm not living within those values. And
Oh,
they're
yeah.
not connecting. And so one of my biggest values, I mean, it's so cliche, but like integrity is one of my biggest values. And so when I do all this personal work and I say that I'm going to show up for myself every day, but then I don't have the confidence in myself to make decisions like this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm living out of integrity every single day that I continue to do that.
Yeah.
So that's going to put me at a 2. So then when I actually get the confidence and to stand up for myself and say this is what I want out of my life, 10. Let's go. Like there is so much power in living in alignment with your values. And I feel like this is one of the things I learned the most in the Clarity Academy was what are my values and how am I living outside of them? And it was something to be said like when we were going through it and doing the course, but now I have so much more space to like sit and be like, okay, this is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on in my life. These are my values. Assess accordingly. And when I have that space to like sit there and look at it, it's so easy to solve. You just have to live within your value system, and you have to be very, very secure with, that as long as you're aligned with your values, you're making the right decision. Because that's the hard part, though, is sitting down and understanding what you truly want out of this life. Like, what are the things that are most important to you?
Or how to
So,
create them, right? We understand that values are important. But when it comes down to it, when you ask somebody, what are your 3 core values, or what's number 1 for you right now? In my book and in my course, one of the things that we do is we create those, and it's something that I've done for the last 10 years that has been super powerful in helping me to make decisions, right? So when you know your core values, when you know what you're not willing to make exceptions for or sacrifice for, it becomes very not, and it's not easy. It's simple. It becomes simple to make decisions, right? So, for example, what you're going through right now, you've identified step 1, you've identified your values. Step 2, you've sensed a misalignment, or you're getting the body discomfort. You feel the friction, feels it. You start to notice that, oh, there's something weird going on right now. Something doesn't feel in flow. So like step 3, you lay it down and you're like, where am I out of alignment? Or how is this not, obviously there's friction going on here. Who's the culprit? What's the culprit? Do I need to shift a value, or do I need to shift my behavior? Do I need to shift my behavior, or do I need to shift like you can start to really make decisions, or and it could be just as small as like, should I go to this party? Or should I go to this it could be a birthday party. It doesn't have to be a party. It could just be a birthday party. Like, should I go to this birthday party? Super simple. Yeah. Should I go to this birthday party? And then you run it through your values and you sit with it. And I think that's something that Americans need to learn how to do a little bit more, especially youth athletes. Everybody needs to learn how to sit with without distraction, to pour it through there, right? So it's like you have this system that you've created and that you've learned, right? That you've learned how to sift through things that are creating friction and how to make the decision that is going to best serve you.
Yeah, and I feel like once you have done that in the past, it gives you the forward momentum to continue to do that in the future. And I think I think boundary or values are really interlaced with having boundaries in your life. And so when something is crossing a value, um, make a boundary for yourself and say, like, if someone is treating you in a certain way and that's putting you outside of your value system, but you're still putting up with it, um, that's where you have to reassess and say, like, what am I going to do in this situation? And that's where you have to kind of like, a boundary is you standing up for yourself
Oh,
and giving
yeah.
your and saying, okay, well, I don't accept um, lying and deception because honesty is one of my core values. Well, then I'm not going to put myself in an environment that condones deception and lies. And when you stand up for yourself in that way, that just builds momentum to continue to live by those core values. And I feel like it's just so important for people to understand that concept. And I think so many people are struggling nowadays with just settling for what is just because it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, you don't have to. Like, you can really truly make this life whatever you want it to be. And no one can tell you what you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to do in this life except you. And no one's values are going to be your values. Like, you make your own decisions and you make your own values based on what your heart is telling you and how you want your life to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are literally looking at an open book and saying, how do I want to write this story? And I think that just us as society needs to like start standing up for ourselves and saying, like, I want to be the author of my life and not let society and all these things that are the typical and the average just write our pages for us. It's about having confidence to say, like, no, this is my story and I want to tell it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is I just want to write my own story and I want to serve as many people as I can with my experiences and my education and my knowledge. And I think there's just so many people that just don't have that mirror right now. And they're in a place where they're like, I just don't know what to do. And trust me, I've been there. I've been at the rock bottom where it's like you look and all you see is the bottom. You don't see anything. But holy crap, when you just turn and you look up, it's like everything's there. Everything is there at your hands. And it's just like it only takes like a few people to like mentor you and coach you to be able to see all the things that we could do in this life. And it's like, man, I just want to be that for somebody. I want
Yeah.
to coach somebody to like see that and empower someone to know that, like, yeah, you're in the storm right now, but like holy crap, you just wait. And like then you'll go back into the storm, but holy crap, just wait.
Well, the more
It's gonna get
storms,
better.
like we've been through a lot of storms, right? Like we've been through a lot of storms and they don't end. Like storms are cyclical. There's patterns of storms and they come and they come. But the better that you get at preparing for the storm or not even like preparing because it seems like a protective thing, but you know that at some point at a random point in time there's going to be a storm. But you know that in your past, every time that you've weathered a storm, you have succeeded, you can build momentum by looking at these past successes or past learning experiences depending on how they went. But you can look at those and then you can look forward and you're like, all right, cool, got that storm. All right, here we go. And then it's like, and then you like ride the rainbow, you're like, the storm comes and then you're just like, cool, I'm going to slide down this rainbow now. And then you're like, boom,
I
boom,
love
boom,
that.
boom, boom.
I do love everything sunshine and rainbows. But truthful, in truth, like life is not always sunshine and rainbows. And I think it's when you give yourself space and you give yourself compassion in those storms where it's like, you know, like you don't have to be the same person that you are during the sunshine. Like, give yourself some love and say, like, it's okay. It's okay to sit here a little bit and be sad and be indecisive, because that is like, I think that's the coolest part about being a human, is like, just like weaving in and out of like all the emotions and all the things and navigating it and just being like, man, like, just making, I don't know, just letting other people see that, like, you know, life is so much more, than like their job or their title or whatever, their company. I don't know. I think that that's the main thing. I just want to make sure that people know is like, your identity is not wrapped up in what you do. Like, your identity is who you are to the deepest core, your soul. It's like your soul stamp. Like,
Ooh.
your identity is not a business. Your identity is not a person that you're with, a relationship. That's not an identity, And I hope people know that. And I think that's the biggest learning lesson, I think, about stepping away from Brick Built, is knowing, like, Brick Built was a time and it was a phase in my life, and oh my God, I'm so grateful for it. But it's not my identity. And for the longest time, I wrapped my whole being up in it, and which is great because it grew. Like, I got to help so many people through that, but um, it was pulling away from my true identity, and that's Danielle McGinnis. And I think that the world is going to be delighted to see me shine at my 100% versus, a half lit Danielle. So,
I know, I'm
um,
excited.
it's lit, fam. Let's go.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you. You're in this magic part, and when we listen to ourselves, when we're aligned, when we follow our intuition, when we, create, when we know who we are, or discover who we are, or like a layer of who we are, or like the deepest layer that we can go to, because, that's a whole other onion, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper, and we really invest in that. Um, things start to show up for us. So I'm really excited to do, you'll be my my first
Part three.
guest to do part 3, because I know that you're still writing your story. I know that you are the author of your story, and I'm so excited to see how your journey shifts, how this pivot is going to really impact more people in a positive way. And I have every confidence that this is the best decision of your life, and that there there is no failure. There is only so much success and so much love, and so much learning ahead. So congratulations on loving yourself, and also inspiring others with your story. When we started this podcast, we were talking about how, we didn't want to say negative things, because there is nothing negative to say other than it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. They're doing big things and great things, and I invested a lot of my time and energy there, and it's no longer for me, and I'm pivoting. And I think that that's something that's important to impress, that, what Brick Built has done, what they're doing now, like, go check them out. Yeah. We want all the success for them. Like, there's enough
Right.
success and winning for everybody. We can share that.
One
And
set.
yeah, there's enough space for all of that. And I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited to get this out there for people, because this is stuff that not a lot of people get exposed to. And so I think, I want to thank you for your vulnerability. I want to thank you for your courageousness. And I want to send all the love, all the excitement, and just, I'm so excited. So thank you so much for being an inspiration to me and to others, and to really, to loving yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to at least tell my story. And yeah, I'm so excited to start showing up for myself, and most importantly, like start showing up for people in 100% of Danielle. And I can't wait to see what this life has to offer. But oh my gosh, so grateful that you can, give me the platform to share my story. Forever grateful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I hope you, the listeners, enjoyed part 2 of Danielle's story, and that you'll continue to come back to this podcast to become inspired by the stories just like this one, and empowered by the strategies, so that you can level up, so that you can unlock your true potential, and so that you can enjoy your own journey. I am so grateful for your attention, and I hope that you got something super special out of this bonus episode. Make sure that you follow Danielle on Instagram. I'm sure she's going to be posting about what's coming next. So make sure you go follow her. She's got great social media presence, really inspiring content. So make sure that you go follow her. Please also subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Stitcher, and all of the other places that this podcast is on. If you want to see us interact, you can actually watch this episode on YouTube. And if you want more awesome content, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all the places. And you can always join us on the journey online at www.bethewinningelement.com. Until next time, train with purpose, play with passion, and seize the day every day.